Hey everyone, welcome back to this Web3 Marketing 101. We're getting close to the end. In the first 4 lessons, we went over what sets Web3 marketing apart from Web2, who the primary audiences are in this space, the basics of paid marketing for Web3, and community, why it matters, and a few things to keep in mind for growth. If you missed them, don't worry, they'll be on our YouTube, you can see them there. Today, we're going to cover some of the elements that are pretty unique in Web3, even if they are ubiquitous across many industries. The first is partnerships. They're different in Web3 because you'll often see competitors working together. But hey, we're all building this from the ground up, so for the most part, there's no reason to rebuild the wheel. The second is influencers. It's just for the most part the Wild West. While influencer marketing is normalizing and agencies are making this work easier in Web3, that's just not the case. And don't forget to stay tuned and subscribe. There are 2 more videos coming. Today we'll get into how you can leverage partnerships in Web3, key channels to broker partnerships, Web3 influencers, who they are and what you can expect, and finally, I'll give you a few examples of how to reach out to other potential partners or influencers to work with. I'm Carly. I'm a social media and community manager and writer. You can connect with me on social media or find me on Discord. We have a Web3 Marketing 101 channel if you want to talk to other people, and I'll be there uploading a case study to go with this lesson. So, if you've been around Web3 for a while, you might have noticed that some projects will announce a new partner every other week. Especially in the early days, this term was thrown around a lot, and as much as I love the collaborative spirit of Web3, maybe it's been overused. But it's really up to the companies involved to decide how they classify a partnership. That being said, I do have a few suggestions to give a bit more structure. The first is, whenever there's a legal sign-off, these types of agreements are usually important enough to qualify an official announcement. The second follows this same line of reasoning. If there's a financial trade-off, well, first of all, there will probably be a legal sign-off. But again, this is pretty important and, in my opinion, warrants using the term partner. The last one is quite a bit more vague, but of course, if there's a deeply impactful relationship, you might want to call them a partner. To give this more shape, think of how you have 3 partnerships to give out per quarter. Would it qualify? You can also ask yourself if this is a lasting relationship, or does it have the potential to be a partner with long-term outreach? Otherwise, here are a few examples of what I would consider impactful relationships. A one-tier wallet or blockchain integration, celebrity backings, or when you close a fundraising round. All of these things can be big enough to catch media attention, so labeling it as a partnership will give it that little bit of extra weight. But of course, before you reach the question of whether or not something might count as a partnership, you'll have to find a few potential partners. There are a few great places to look, whether online or offline. But in virtual spaces, joining community calls and town halls can go a long way. This shows your potential partner not only that you're interested in what they're doing, but also that they're doing it for their community. So when you approach them, you can make an informed pitch that can help them increase the value that they offer their community or improve their services. Another great tactic is first extend an invite for something that is much smaller commitment. Offering a spot to join your community as a guest speaker is great. First of all, it front-loads value to them as they get a chance to talk to a new audience, and second, this is a pretty low commitment, often just an hour or so, but it still opens the channels for a deeper conversation. Don't be afraid to open up conversations online. If you see that you're in the same community or you've been seeing their posts a lot, shoot them a message. Just keep in mind that this method has a lower success rate. And while you want to be clear about the path forward, you might not want to start with giant proposals. Give people a bit more time to feel out what a partnership might look like. And finally, this last one is actually very similar to the first, but joining Twitter Spaces can be a great way to express interest. If you may find that the speakers, not the hosts, might be a good fit for your project. But there's also a reason why so much networking takes place in person. It can be a bit easier to catch someone's attention or communicate how a partnership would be mutually beneficial. So if your main job is partnerships, make sure to keep an eye on events. These are some great places to look. Think of NFT NYC, which despite its name is good for all crypto topics. Solana Breakpoint for the Solana ecosystem, where you can find similar ecosystem-centric events for all major campaigns and chains like Near, Flow, and more. Art Basel for primarily NFTs. Of course, ETH events and conferences, which is good for all crypto but tends to be more developer heavy. Don't discount actual hackathons and developer cons. All of these events pull people who are looking to network and drive their project forward. So, on top of hearing about the latest innovations and directions, you can make an extremely valuable connection. Just make sure to get their contact information, follow up, and provide both clear value and an ask. So, you say you're looking for something that won't necessarily add to the technical abilities or increase your services, but you need more reach. Enter influencers. Web3 influencers are extremely important because this space can be difficult to understand, from the technical specs to the economics. So many Web3 influencers end up building a name as a trusted source of information. More on this later. But first, the difference between traditional and Web3 influencers. The first is follower count. Where traditional influencers regularly pull 100K plus followers, Web3 is niche and smaller. On Twitter, it can be anyone with 5,000 followers, although you can also find far more people to keep an eye out for, but just watch for bots. And on YouTube, TikTok, or Instagram, 10,000 plus usually constitutes an influencer in this space. Second is how you pay an influencer. Obviously, traditional influencers take fiat payment, but it's also common for them to receive sponsored items as payment. In Web3, tokens are the most common form of payment, but of course, some influencers may ask for stablecoins or bigger tokens rather than your own token. And given the size of Web3 influencers, there's often a difference in management. While traditional influencers are usually managed by companies, Web3 influencers generally aren't big enough to catch their attention. They're usually still independent. And this changes how you find and source Web3 influencers. Traditional influencers will be listed on affiliate platforms, but with Web3 influencers, you often have to source them manually. Finally, you can get to an interesting point for Web3. While traditional influencers are usually famous and share a lot about their life, Web3 influencers can also be anonymous and remain that way even as you're working with them. So how do you actually find your influencers because you can't usually use an affiliate platform? There are a few good ways to reach out. First, of course, is DMs and events. This is pretty similar to how you would get in touch with a potential partner. Just keep in mind that you're likely to talk to a person or an organization rather than just a few people. And some influencers will actually provide instructions for how to reach out to them for their work on their websites or in their bios. So make sure to check that before you reach out to them. Finally, the influencer community is pretty small. If you work with one, chances are they know a few other influencers that they can refer you to. This method will typically be the most effective for actually booking influencers. And when you're reaching out, keep a few things in mind. Be human, honest, and relatable. This is especially important because when interacting online, people can forget that there are multiple people behind the screen, and as well-known personalities, influencers can face with a lot of people who reach out to them with a lot of demands. And this leads to the next. Front-load the value that they will get. People usually reach out with requests only, but let them know what's in it for them and give them a good reason to respond. If you're not sure what kind of compensation they're looking for, you can always ask. Actually, it can be a good idea because the independent nature of Web3 influencer landscape, prices can vary widely and get very high, so keep that in mind and set a budget beforehand. And to make sure that you don't seem too scammy, reach out with an account with your own face or with an official company account that has a decent number of followers. Finally, keep in mind that many Web3 influencers only have their platform because they're seen as a reliable source of information. If you ask them for a review, they may be brutally honest, even if they're getting paid. But let's dive into the anatomy of good outreach copy. DMs are one of the most ubiquitous ways of reaching out to potential partners or influencers that you want to work with. But they're also one of the least effective ways. Part of this is because most social media has pretty strong screening. So if you aren't mutuals, you'll end up in the requests folder and may never get seen. But as for bigger accounts, there's actually a decent chance that they check their requests every so often. So when you're sending DMs, there are a few things to keep in mind to increase the chances that you'll get an answer. Alright, so let's look at this example. This is a good message if you've already had an interaction, whether online or in person, but want to make sure to keep the relationship going. So this message says, of course. Side note, not sure if you've heard of a drop-in audio platform called Join Clubhouse, but it's been one of my favorite places to talk about XR recently. My friend Ryan Upinski and I are co-hosting conversations there for our XR founders. We'd love to invite you as one of the speakers. It's an informational conversation, but really engaging since the audience gets to participate. Let me know if you'd be interested. There are a few other things that can make this message good. One is it's very human. It sounds like a natural continuation of the conversation, probably because it is. It's also very polite. Two, it clearly brings in a piece of information that might be interesting, the conversations about XR. But from there, it says exactly what the sender wants, which is an invitation to speak, and it lays out why they would be a good fit by saying conversations are with XR founders, which presumably the person receiving this message is. Then it gives a little more information about what's going to be going on without it being too long. Saying this is informal, so taking much of the work off of the person, but still very engaging and pointing towards high value. And this is important. The very last thing is a clear call to action. Even if you've already included a call to action earlier in a message, people sometimes forget it by the time they reach the end. So always try to reiterate the immediate action a person should take at the end. And in this case, immediate action is not giving the talk, but just agreeing to give it or declining it. Okay, but you're not always in a position where you're carrying out a conversation. Sometimes you need to actually start the conversation first. That obviously looks a bit different. So first, let's take a look at this copy, then we can get into why it might work. I'm the founder of a digital fashion and art club on Clubhouse, 17K members. My co-host, Evelyn Mora, and I would like to introduce you to our community and invite you for an hour-long discussion about your work and thoughts about the future of brand engagement. Let me know if you'd be interested to join us. We'd have conversations with fashion's critical thinkers like Sarah Moino, deputy editor of Vogue Italy, Ines Alpha, Ruby Gloom, etc. You can learn more about the club and past speakers here. Enara. So this copy is obviously very different from the other. First of all, it starts with an introduction. But if you look at this introduction, it's already setting up why the person might care by mentioning the community in size. Now, not everyone will have a 17K plus community to offer as a benefit, but you can think of the types of benefits that might be interesting to your potential partners that you can offer. Maybe it's tech. Maybe they've been recognized for a new business model, but just make sure that it's something that's likely to be interesting to the person that you're messaging and that you can deliver on. The second thing is the ask. Now, you want to be clear about what you want and make sure people don't get lost in the long message before they understand your ask, but also make sure that you don't ask for anything really big in an initial message. That's why guest speaker slots are great. They offer some visibility but don't demand huge commitment. But while this is generally a good match for potential partners and some influencers, other influencers might not be interested in this format or doing this work for free, or just visibility, so keep that in mind. Another thing to note about the ask is that it's brief, but fairly clear. Both the time commitment and topic are included. You'll need to make sure the topic aligns with the person's interests and often is broad enough for them to add their own spin. And going back to doing work for just visibility, many people will be open to that if they're interested in the topic. But if it's a talk that's extremely promotional, like a talk about a brand, that willingness dries up quickly. Finally, you get even more social proof. Especially for first messages, people need to figure out who you are and why you matter to them in a very short period of time. So this will look different for every project, but finding out the value that you provide and how to quickly communicate that will massively improve how effective your messages are. And finally, this message ends with a link, inviting the person to learn more before demanding an exact answer. While it might be better to end with a reminder to get back to you, honestly, following a link is also a call to action. And in initial messages, you have very limited space to try to put a lot of compelling information. Okay, so assuming the follow-up or initial outreach went well, you'll have to actually book them. For this, you might actually want to use a series of messages to help break it up and give them a better chance to respond to each question individually, giving you a better shot at getting answers to all of your questions. So the first message might look like this. So great to connect with you and excited to hear that this opportunity sounds exciting to you. I'm sharing below some details about timing and event format for you to review. And then some concrete opinions are listed. So, why does this work? Starting with some enthusiasm, let them know that you're excited about this and try to get them a little more interested. Then follow with a clear direction. Here are the details. Finally, give them a few concrete times and dates to choose from. You'll then want to give them the chance to respond with the time that they actually want to book. Once they get back to you, you want to give them even more specifics. This message gets into the exact details so they don't feel like they're going in blind. So the first thing here is who, but immediately after this is detailed breakdown of the hour, from introductions to different areas of Q&A. This makes people feel more secure as they are more clear on what will happen, then even go into more details. First, the goals of the guided Q&A, and second, the type of audience to give the speaker a better idea of the type of questions that might come from the audience. Because there's no question or call to action here, you can move directly to your next message. This message starts with a clear ask. Could you please share 3 to 4 points that you are excited about in digital fashion? This is good because it details the exact amount of points you want without making it too big, and it gives the topic again. Then it goes on to say why this will be used to draft questions. With this, you have to be prepared to not receive it though. So if you're sending this message, you need to be ready to draft questions without their input. But after the next steps are reiterated, a reminder is sent with a date, if needed, and what you'll do, sharing the questions. And finally, you want to remind them that you are excited for this. Okay, so to recap, partnerships are important. They give you more technical prowess and bigger reach, but try to define them for your company in a way that is impactful. Web3 influencers aren't as structured to traditional influencers. You'll have to find many of them on your own and keep in mind that they exist based on their reputation. So working with you can't negatively impact their reputation or it will degrade their platform. Outreach is important, but it's an art form. 2 essential things are starting with small asks and defining your initial value. Alright, we're just about at the end of this course. Make sure to subscribe, there's still one more lesson. Next week, I'll dive into a bigger picture, look at marketing strategy for Web3, and join our Discord. We have paid marketing case study in the Web3 Marketing 101 channel and people to talk to, including me. You can check the events section to see when I'll be holding office hours.